we are the treasure keepers, of that legacy. We're the current generation that needs to pass that along.
Welcome to Karate Cafe, your source for martial art conversations since 2005. And now, here's your host, Paul Wilson and Dan Williams.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Karate Cafe-ians, Cafe-ites, something like that. I hope your day, afternoon, or evening is going as brilliantly as mine is. Paul, I see on the agenda here, we are interviewing a chai tea master. Is that correct?
Very close.
Very close. Guys, I'm wondering, why do we have a chai tea master on Karate Cafe today is the real question.
If you would slow down a little, you would see that it's a Tai Chi master instructor.
Tai master. Those are two very different things, I think.
Those are. One is hot, one is slow.
Although I wouldn't be surprised if today's Tai Chi master were also a chai tea master.
I like
that. Would not surprise me at all.
That's a very good Tyson Bach body change kind of thing. In the green room, we have someone near and dear to me, David-Dorian Ross of Tai Chi Fit. He is my Tai Chi instructor from back in the day, and I've been kind of following him along, and I pinged him to see if he would like to come on the show. Because I haven't talked to him in probably 25 years. I mean, traded some emails and stuff back and forth. But he's been doing a lot of stuff with online training. As you will hear probably many times in the interview, he really affected my karate. So, and I was really excited to have him on. And then I was also excited to have somebody, from the Chinese sort of bent to, touch upon your Chinese roots.
I took Tai Chi from age 18 to age 20, and the guy's name was Tony Simper, and it's amazing that I still remember his name today. So if anybody in the audience knows Tony Simper, leave it in the comments below, right?
Hey guys, like and subscribe.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear what he has to say. I'm excited to taste his tea. I think it'll be wonderful.
He does have some good tea. We're not going to spill any tea. We are going to talk about the chi. That would actually be kind of an interesting thing if we got your Tai Chi instructor
That'd be pretty cool.
My Tai Chi instructor and put them in there and have them, because one of the things we talk about is competition days, and that was one of the the questions is like, how do you do Tai Chi competition? And we found out. And
I have done Tai Chi competition before.
Have you?
Yes, I've done push hands and
you didn't even
forms.
You didn't mention that. We had like a whole talk and you didn't even say anything about that.
I wasn't very good at it. I only did it like once or twice.
Yeah, you competition rat. Anyway, it was a really great conversation and lots of great revelations on being an instructor and what he's learned over the years as an instructor. His online presence. He was kind of online before online was cool. And it was just a great conversation, all in all, I thought. And so I guess without further ado, we'll open up the door to the green room and bring in my old Tai Chi instructor, Tai Chi master, David-Dorian Ross. And we are back from the green room here at the massive Karate Cafe studio. Here, just to my left or my right, or maybe my bottom, I'm not sure, is David-Dorian Ross. David, thank you for coming on Karate Cafe.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
For context, whenever I was always talking about doing Tai Chi, you can blame him. He's the reason. Let me tell you the story. There I was, 1996, I think.
1990 something.
Yeah, and I was working news in Honolulu, and the morning show. And for some reason, and this is the whole I've been thinking about doing Tai Chi for a while, and I got called in early for a story. And so I was there early and I was doing the live shot out where I was. And in the morning show, they had David come in and you were doing a Tai Chi demonstration or whatever. And I was like, oh.
It's Granny Goose.
Yeah. Because he'd come back. anyway, so I called back to the station. I was like, "Oh, grab the Tai Chi guy." And I think they dragged you back into the newsroom. You were like, "Hello." And so I asked where classes was, and it was like, "There's a class on Saturday. Come on down." And so got to train with you and the group down in Kapilani Park. It was fantastic. And long story short, Tai Chi totally changed my karate. So once again, David, thank you for that. And so I've been really excited to try and get him on for a while. One of the things that I wanted to talk to him about is his online training. He, as well as your history, because I can't remember how deep we dove into it back in the day, but you're a medalist in Tai Chi, so we want to talk about your training. We want to talk about how, in my mind at least, you were kind of ahead of the curve on online training, and then we'll probably geek out and tangent off on all kinds of things. So David, can you just give us a quick shot of some of the arts you study and maybe how you got started in martial arts?
So the quick story is that I was not looking for martial arts or Tai Chi or anything. I was looking to learn how to meditate. I was just out of the service and I wanted to go back to college, and I felt like completely mentally unprepared. So I thought, oh, I'll learn to meditate, and that'll be like, push-ups for the brain. And I completely failed at meditation. I do ADD or something. I could not sit still that long. So I heard about moving meditation. And at my university, there was a class. I was going to school in San Francisco, of all places. So there was a Tai Chi class, and I took the class. And on the very first day of the very first class, it changed my life. Not just changed my physicality, it changed my whole life. And I found my calling. And so really my whole life since then. And that was 40, almost years ago. Since then, I've just had tremendous good fortune. It's just been like one lucky break after another. So I began to train with one of the very first Tai Chi masters who came to the States, and then began to open it up to non-Chinese people, and studied from him and his wife for a couple of years in what is now known as Guangping style. It's supposedly sort of the middle point between Chen style and what we now call Yang style, when Yang Luchan went back home, back to the village, which was called Guangping Village. And so anyway, that's another story for another day, I think. And then after that, I found myself with the opportunity to join the San Francisco Wushu team. So that was the U.S. championship team. And the big thing that happened there is we were the first group to bring coaches from China over to teach. And we had a number of different specialists in different, long fist and southern fist and everything. And we had some Tai Chi specialists. And so I got set up with them, and I learned a lot of what was going on with Tai Chi in China at that point in time. And that sort of like started me off. And I began to compete. And to be honest with you, one of the reasons why I competed was because, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I am Caucasian. And so in the early days, I would offer a class and people would show up for class and go, "Where's the teacher?" And I'm like, "I'm the teacher." And but you're not Chinese. So I thought a little street cred would go a long way. So I began to compete, and that eventually led to several national gold medals, and then the opportunity to be on the U.S. team to go to China and compete for the U.S. in international competition. And there I set a record, which should be, I'm calling out all the people in the U.S. right now who are doing Tai Chi. You should be breaking my record. So I have 2 bronze medals and a silver medal in the world championships from different competitions.
Oh, wow.
And
that's, nowadays you could just say I identify as Chinese, and you could have avoided all that competition stuff. Saved yourself a lot of travel.
The first time I went to China, I'm like, I've been here before. I know these places. So maybe in my past life. So.
and that's a good. I've asked, joking around, is like, what is a Tai Chi competition like? This is what would be one of the tangents. Is like, what, just for context, what is it?
That's a good question for nobody that's ever been to one.
Sure. Well, it's not that different from going to a karate tournament where there are 2 categories. You have sparring and you have kata performance. And so Tai Chi, I'm a specialist in what you'd call kata or Tai Chi forms. I have competed in their sparring version, which is known as push hands, and not done as well. Fourth place nationally is the highest I ever got to on that score. But on the so it's rather like any other ring where there are about 5 different judges placed in the different corners of the ring, and they evaluate you on things like the performance of the particular style and the routine, doing each movement in the as close to perfection as possible. So you have certain movements that you have to perform, and you're judged on whether you did them correctly. Then there's also your athletic ability, your physicality, how flexible you are, how high you can kick, and how high you can hold, how long you can hold those kicks. And then the really interesting one, which is what's the quality of your chi? Like, what's your spirit?
Interesting.
Like? Yeah, because that's what I was wondering. Because I mean, there's like a million different flavors of kung fu. There's a bunch of flavors of tai chi. It's like, so they're like watching, because when I've gone and been lucky enough to judge any sort of martial art tournament, I just look for the quality of the martial art, because I don't know all the forms and all the different systems of it. I just look for, I guess maybe the chi, or just like how well it's performed as a martial artist, as opposed to how well it's supposed to be formed relative to that form, because I don't know, the
it's
style and whatever.
It's funny. My wife and I were watching some movie where somebody was in the body of somebody else. I don't know. It was a sci-fi movie or something like that, and they could tell they were the bad person based on their fighting style. And I thought about that, and I thought, you could do that. Like, if you've sparred with somebody enough times and you've sparred with somebody else enough times, you could definitely see a certain style in somebody, just like in competition. You may not know exactly what the form is supposed to look like, but I think if you're an experienced martial artist in any form, you could probably know what it's not supposed to look like. Right? So I think that subjective judging, well, it is very subjective. Again, you probably could see it when you know it when you saw it.
And I think that aspect of it when you see it today is a lot different than when I started competing back in the 80s, when I actually did a long, maybe 3-4 years, where I competed around the country against not other Tai Chi people or other Chinese martial artists, but against Japanese style, Korean stylists. So I was just in open category competitions.
I see.
And people really didn't know what they were looking at. They just, ooh, that looks smooth,
Right.
But today I think there's a lot more of a sense of what Tai Chi is and how it should look.
Yeah. Did you find when you were competing that, again, you were like, hey, it's, Quilo over there doing his stuff, did you feel like there was some, like, well, he's from America, so we're going to judge him more harshly, or, did that ever seem to come up?
It's an interesting question. In the tournaments that I competed in, where most of the judges were American or, non-Chinese, I usually got, I think, probably a little bit more forgiving judging, to be honest with you, because it was unique and it wasn't something that they could judge more harshly, because they didn't know the minutia of what I might be doing right or wrong. And so they just sort of gave me the benefit of the doubt because I didn't suck. Right? In competitions, when I went to China, by that time I had developed a certain, level of competence that they appreciated. And the one thing that really, I think, led to my acceptance in Tai Chi and my acceptance in China and doing well in competition is I work harder than anybody else works, because I am not very talented. And so to compensate for my lack of talent, I have to have a level of skill. And so I just work harder, twice as hard. I'm there twice as long at practice. I come twice as many times as people go to practice. The first 5 times I went to China, everybody else goes off to the tours and goes to the Great Wall. I like work on Sundays in the practice room. And so that was
one of my favorite sayings is the harder I work, the luckier I get.
The harder I work, the luckier. That's very true. That's so true.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let me ask you this. What was it, do you feel like, that spoke to you about Tai Chi? What was it that when you saw it and started it, that not only did it, obviously it grabbed you initially, but you also stuck with it? And I'm curious about what was that what was that initial attraction?
So I had a magical experience of it. It was like, it was a real gift. And in the early days, in fact, for the first like 20, 30 years, I talked about it much differently than I talk about it now.
Oh,
At this age of life and this level of sort of
Perspective.
perspective of philosophy and whatnot, I say that I had my first experience of being truly authentic. Like I really was authentically feeling what my body was really like, and not all of the, bad habits and quirks and compensations that I had developed my first 20 years of life. And in that moment, I was like, God, everything is beautiful. Everything. Like, I've never moved like this before. I've never felt like, I've never seen things like this before. I've never appreciated the people around me like this before. Like, it was truly a gift. Lasted like 30 seconds, and then I spent the next 3 or 4 years looking for it to find it again. And it was like, since then it's been, this is like so magical. I just want to share that with everybody.
It's kind of interesting because I remember when I started training with you, and you said like it's going to take you a while to feel your chi. It's just going to take you a while. I said, but you'll feel it. You'll feel it. And I'm kind of a martial skeptic. I mean, I was a journalist, so I was kind of a skeptic anyway. And then just martial arts, I was kind of like, okay, whatever, hippie. But it was your presentation, you and CJ's presentation of how you taught it, and just very forthright, and not artsy fartsy or whatever. And like I say, there was a guy there. I think he was kind of your senior student at the time. I think it was a guy named David, and he was like, "Oh, well, you're the karate guy. Well, have David do some stuff to you, and like you did, like wave hands like clouds, and like, hey, come here, Paul." You knocked me on the button. I'm like, okay, there's something to this, so I'm gonna focus a little more. And then one day I was doing the form, and I was like, ooh, I feel it. I feel it. And I was like, I feel it. And you're like, yeah, kind of, and whenever I did Tai Chi and whenever I still kind of stumble through it, to this day, I'm still kind of looking for it. And I find it, and I think maybe in different forms, than the actual feeling. I guess the physical feeling is more maybe the mental feeling, um, as when that goes on. So, it's kind of in your the way you taught and the way you teach Tai Chi, it does seem like that you're very, your affect is very, positive and not, for lack of a better word, crunchy granola or whatever. But but you're also, at least when I was training with you, very like, this is it, and kind of not necessarily fake it till you make it, but you'll feel it. And that's, as an instructor now, that's kind of where I am on a lot of stuff, where I go like, this will work. Trust me, it works, but you've got to go find it for yourself a little bit.
So that was, relatively speaking, early on in my career as a teacher. And I worked and worked and worked and worked since the time that I was training with you to find a way to make that way more immediate. Like, instead of saying, trust me, you'll feel it, give it a couple of years or whatever. I find that to be like impractical in the 21st century. Like, there's too much else to compete with your attention. So the real like hook for people is to feel it right away. So we now teach in a way that in your first class, you feel that flow, you feel that chi. And this is actually quite traditional in Chinese martial arts. Most of Chinese martial arts is influenced in some way with Shaolin Kung Fu, right? The thing that people often don't realize is that Shaolin Kung Fu, the Shaolin Temple, specialized in a very specific kind of Buddhism called direct experience. and they use martial arts as a way of teaching that, because there's nothing more direct experience than getting punched in the mouth. Right. So the idea that I don't want to ask you, I don't want to be crunchy granola. I don't want to be out there. I don't want to ask you, hey, just trust me, just stick with it. You'll get it. But rather, okay, here's the chocolate ice cream, put it in your mouth and taste it. And then you don't have to trust me anymore. You'll have it for yourself.
And is that like an active process? Like, did you go try and find a path for that? Because now I feel a little bit cheated. I mean, it's taken me.
Well, absolutely.
It took me 3 months to get that.
Like, dude, you were my guinea pig. Are you kidding me? So, so over the years, I tell people like this. Now we have a very successful methodology and program. I said, but listen, I've been doing this for 45 years, which means most of that 45 years I got it wrong, right? And so I just paid attention and studied and tried things out on myself and on my students until we finally figured out what the ingredients that pretty consistently led to that experience. And that's what we use now.
That's pretty amazing. And speaking of the 45 years, so I've followed your career, like back when we were on AOL, and over the thing, and I noticed you were doing a series. It was a few years back, and you were working with a lot of different martial artists. Like you were working with like Kathy Long, the kickboxer, and just Taekwondo people. And I was like, what's he doing messed with these people? And so did you go and seek out like other styles to work out, or did they come to you and go like, hey, there's a component that we need you to train me with?
So this is a really interesting question. So first of all, when I first started learning about Tai Chi, because I had no context for martial arts at all, this wasn't something that was in my life before that. And so I'm like, I need to taste as much as possible. And living in San Francisco was really fortuitous because there's a lot of great martial arts in San Francisco of all different styles. So I studied Goju-Ryu with one of the Yamaguchis, and I studied a little bit of judo. Along the way in my competitive years, I got a chance to meet all these other great martial artists. So Kathy is a good personal friend of mine. Dave Wheaton is a great personal friend of mine. All these great people. Because I'm insatiably curious. So it's like, I've been doing this for 45 years. I could walk into a classroom and pretend like this is my first day ever, and just like soak it up as a beginner.
It's interesting. I've always felt with Tai Chi, it is a good, what I would call supplementary martial art. I feel the same way about judo and to some degree Aikido, in that regardless of whatever your core art is, you will gain benefits of balance and perspective and things like that from working with one of what I call the supplemental martial arts. Not that you can't do a deep dive, obviously, but I feel like Tai Chi is something that regardless of what style you're in, you should have some exposure to.
Yeah. I always said that if you watch films of older masters from different styles, like even Masayama, who's like the bull, right? So, but in their later years, they all look like they're doing Tai Chi. They've all got this smoothness and this softness and this non-forcingness. And I'm like, all right, so that actually is probably a very valid approach to studying any style. Just Tai Chi it up, man.
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the number one rules of my dojo is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I decided a long time ago, I don't have that many black belts. I got like two or three black belts, but I decided at some point that like at second degree, a black belt, I was gonna teach in the short form as well as I could do it, because my system isn't necessarily just a linear system or a hard system even, but still there's a lot of kind of rough edges, and I find, like, so when I teach, we teach joint locks and stuff like that, or my whole thing is like moving my core, and getting my foot placement right, and all this other stuff, and I got that from you, so they can blame you when you guys, my students, if you're watching this, that's his fault, or his fault, depending on the because that was a supplemental art. It wasn't, yes, it truly is an art, but I mean, like for me, it really, like, smooth the edges and filled in the kinks where I missed it. And I mean, when you were training with all these other people, did they see what you were doing and going like, "Ooh, yeah, I'm going to steal that"? Or
Sometimes that's true. When I was doing the research for that video that we did with Kathy and all the other martial arts guys, I went into a Kempo school locally here. And again, when I go into a place like that, I don't tell them who I am or, I mean, I use my real name, but I don't like go in and say, "Oh, I'm Tai Chi dude." I just like, okay, I'm blank slate, teach me. And so they had me doing some techniques and then was sparring with one of the older students there. And I was doing a joint lock and he like stepped back and go, "How do you know how to do that?" And I'm like, just seemed natural, so I think there's an appreciation of that. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you the competition thing. You've obviously done a lot of competing, a lot more than a lot of other people, maybe. Do you feel like it was funny? We got this comment in one of our last videos as well about competing and things like that. Is that how do you think the competition? What effect did that have on not just your training, like your regimen and things like that, but did it have an effect on what you learned or what you focused on? Or my hesitation is, especially for the more sport styles, is it's the old thing where for a jujitsu guy, if he gets himself in a bad situation and he's choking out some guy on the street and the guy taps him on the side, is he going to let him go? Right. So you're training to be safe and you're training for competition, but that's kind of counterproductive to what you're trying to do. So I'm wondering if you felt that at all in the competition side, where you may have focused on things that helped you win competition, but maybe not necessarily things that you would have focused on otherwise.
Absolutely. Again, my perspective has changed over the decades, So at one point after I had retired from competition and sort of spent some more time studying, and by the way, spent a large chunk of years not doing any training at all, just like, wandered off, lost my way, or experienced another chapter of my life before I came back. And coming back, the real growth began. And one of the things that I really came to very solidly was that what it looks like is immaterial. And what it feels like is where the reality is. And and this is, I'm really good at making it look good. I mean, that was my entire competitive career. Because like I said, I work harder than anybody. So I work on my precision. I work on the demonstration of all the movements, and now they're in my body. So I don't have to pay that much attention to them. But it really taught me in the contrast between being so good on the outside, but not really feeling it on the inside, versus like, what if it doesn't matter what it looks like, but what your inner experience is so fulfilling that that's all that matters.
That is very interesting. And did you find, so then I think you just said it, but there was a delta between like, this is what it looks like when it feels right, and this is what it looks like when it looks right.
Absolutely. It's interesting because when it feels right, when it truly authentically feels right, then everything works. Like you quote Musashi, who says, between thought and action, there's not even a breath, right? Because there's no need to analyze or think it through or perform something. It just all works.
It's just muscle memory at that point.
But the philosophy, the history, the story of Musashi is a good lesson, because the story is that he did nothing else but train himself daily for his entire life. That was his entire practice. And the result of all that practice is it becomes your body. right? You don't
Yeah,
have
it's
to
just
think
second
about it.
nature then.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, me too.
that's a good phrase that I understand what you mean. But if you really think about it, it's that it becomes first nature.
Ah, yes. Right. That's a good way to put it.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
And that kind of dovetails on one of my questions that I have. Yeah, a few years ago, I was teaching and I was at a yoga studio, and they said, do you do Tai Chi? And I'm like, depends on who you talk to. You know,
Do I do it well?
and
No.
I said, I can kind of work with it. Anyways, they were wanting me to teach a Tai Chi class. And I was like, well, maybe not. So, but then I got to thinking, and I was like, oh, because I'm kind of on the whole practical application bent and have been for a few years. And I was like, well, I called it Tai Chi combatives because I remember in the old day like what's I'm sinking in. What am I doing? Well, I'm opening somebody's hands and grabbing them, pulling them down, or anything. Wave hands like clouds. I'm parrying and disrupting somebody's dance or whatever. So I was going to do a class on that, and like everybody that was interested in Tai Chi, like nobody wanted to do anything with it. So and I think that Tai Chi kind of has a more or less a reputation of like it's things that like old people and hippies do. And there's a whole lot of
Now
art
I'm
over
in both
here.
of those things now.
You've come full circle. There's there's the martial part of it that is kind of talked to, but nobody ever does. But I have felt it, thanks to you. And then there's also the art part. Do you think that there's still sort of that? Because I mean, you're teaching way more people and worked with more people doing Tai Chi. Do you think that's still sort of the affect that it has, that people think it's kind of moving meditation and there's nothing really practical about it?
Well, I
And
think that that's going to be around for a long time. That sort of because it's not mainstream in our culture. One of the things I'm working on so hard is to try to bring Tai Chi more mainstream into the culture, and then people will appreciate the many different sides of it. Um, and I get asked all the time, or I get challenged all the time about what's the right way to do Tai Chi. It's like what is Tai Chi really? And I'm like, that's an individual question. That has nothing to do with me or with what Tai Chi is or what it's supposed to be like. Everybody has the right to have their own personal relevance. Like what the right way of doing Tai Chi is what's relevant to that individual. And as a professional teacher, my job is to figure that out and present what I love in a way that makes sense to them. Right? You can't force people to feel stuff, but you can, give them the spoonful and let them put it in their own mouth. That's a really stretched out metaphor right there.
Well, so I guess I didn't want to get to this question too early, but it seems like the proper time. In your mind, what's the point? Why do we take martial art classes? Why do we do any of this stuff? Because I think there's been a recent focus on a singular aspect of all martial arts that has pushed aside a lot of other things.
To be a good person. Period. Amen. End of story.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Karate Do is the way, all the old Okinawan masters, then, and the Japanese karate, that's one of the things that they talked about when it went from jutsu, which was, the combat applications, to, just the way they were like, it's a way to make yourself better, you know, and so that kind of dovetails with the previous question because, you talk to people in the karate world, especially, and then, reality-based self-defense, et cetera, Krav Maga, the whole thing is combat. We're in combat,
Right.
and it's that martial part that they focus on so well. But like, what I appreciated with Tai Chi was I kind of already had the martial part kind of in place. I did Tai Chi to kind of soften the edges, but then I realized there is a martial part. You
Mhm.
didn't show. I mean, you would show it as a demonstration because a lot of times I couldn't figure out what the move was. You know, and then I would say, "Show me," and you would show me, and I'm like, "Okay, I can get my head around that." And there's a martial part there. So when I talk to people about Tai Chi and it comes up, I'm like, "Yeah, there's stuff there." I mean, so do you? I mean, do you have like a component of like, okay, we're just going to do the applications today, kind of thing, in your in-person classes?
Rarely. That's a great question. Sometimes in my in-person classes, when we sort of have a moment when we can go into that place, it's like, oh, I call it the golden nugget moments. It's like, you want to see something really cool? All right, let's go there for a
It might
second.
hurt a little bit. You might feel a pinch.
Well, yeah, I tend not to do that.
And for those listening, those moments usually happen after class when the real
Right.
students stick around.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. One of my Tai Chi teachers who also taught harder Kung Fu, I say I learned way more from him after class was over. And this was in San Francisco. He had a studio next door to a Chinese restaurant. And we would go next door for lunch after. And we'd sit around and he would tell all these stories. And he would say, when we do this and that, and he says, what's really going on there? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, that's the golden.
It's funny.
Yeah,
Paul and I have
that's where
talked
the
a
usual
lot.
training goes on right there.
Right.
Paul and I have talked a lot about the difference between a student and a customer, and that many schools have a lot of customers because they need to stay in business, and generally have a few students. And to get that student experience, those are the things, that's when those things happen, is after class when you're sitting on the mat or, having a beer or whatever the case might be.
That is entirely the responsibility of the teacher to turn people into students rather than just having customers. I hear a lot of people lamenting that, there's not enough serious students left, or, there's, I just have to take what I can get. And like, no, people are people. Like I've traveled all over the world, and I'm telling you, people are nice, people are friendly, people are curious, people are hardworking. If you've got somebody who's not putting in the effort, that's your freaking fault, not the student.
Interesting.
Man, that's some harsh Tai Chi words, man.
What is the purpose of the teacher? Like if the student was already self-disciplined and already able to drum up their own interest and have an internal locus of control, they wouldn't need you. They're coming to you because they lack those things. And the idea that they should just immediately have the interest level or the dedication to study your art is ridiculous. It's unfair.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, because this idea of, the senior master sits in the office, the school office, while a senior student teaches, and kind of then they come out of their office every once in a while with their hands behind their back and they walk around the dojo a little bit and they correct somebody and then they go back into the office.
Right.
That's not really what a teacher should be there for. And I think
Well,
what you're
it's
describing
missing a bunch of steps is what happens. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so there's a place for that. There is a place for the old master to come out and give a couple of drops of wisdom.
Mhm.
But what's missing in that story is the years that he spent face to face with those senior students, developing them to a place where they're actually the legitimate teacher.
Right.
And
now they're the
giving
teacher.
trust to them to take over the class.
Yeah. And I think too that, what kind of you said in there, or at least what I heard, was it's important to not just be an instructor, but also to some degree be a coach, help people along and help motivate people. And I remember one of my instructors, he had this book of sayings that he just liked. And after class, we'd all sit down and he would say, okay, so I was reading this the other day and here's the quote and blah, blah, blah. What do you guys think about that? And then we'd actually have a kind of a conversation about it as part of the class. And so it was this holistic thing of, I don't just come in here and teach you technique 1 and technique 2 and technique 3, but there's a holistic mindset to this whole thing. Again, sort of like a coaching practice, not just a teacher kind of thing.
Absolutely. Going back to the idea of what is the purpose of martial arts, and I say to be a good person. And it doesn't mean that I argue with the people who focus on technique and combative skills and all that kind of stuff as like, well, no, this is the point about martial arts. That's why it's a martial thing instead of a painting class. I'm going, that's not wrong. But if you have martial skill, but you have no philosophy, you are a bully. You have the skill to dominate other people. And what good is that? What good does that do the world we live in? And so the point about becoming a better person and the use of martial arts as that pathway is to combine the two, to combine, self-discipline and skill, loyalty, courage, righteousness, and those things, along with a philosophy of I do what I do for the greatest good for the greatest number.
So I'm curious now, in a world where we're all going online, how do we help connect with some of those softer skills online then? I mean, you have online courses and things like that. Do you have courses in philosophy and life in general and things?
We weave them together inseparably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go next was in, as I was saying earlier, it seemed to me, I mean, I'm sure people were doing it, but that you were kind of on the forefront of online training. I mean, you you like say you did that early series with all the different martial artists, but then now you have Tai Chi Fit, where I mean, it sounds like it's like you've got the morning flow shows, and you've got a pretty big presence on YouTube and stuff like that. So was that kind of did you like stumble upon the online thing because you really kind of got there before the rest of us schmoes that were forced to because of the pandemic, and you've got I'd see posts where you'd be like, I've got my new studio coming up. I'm like, are people doing this? And now, a year and a half ago, we all learned that people had to do it. So how did you get into the online component of your training?
Well, it's very interesting. I've always had a concept of the use of technology, of the use of media as a way of expanding how you teach and expanding who you can reach as a teacher.
Yes, because I had the Tai Chi in Paradise VHS tapes. So that's how long he's been doing it.
And that is one of the steps along the way. It's like, okay, so because I was thinking about this as I was teaching in Hawaii, there's only so many people that I'm going to meet here in Hawaii. Then I started traveling and doing workshops, and I'm still like, well, there's still only so many people that I'm going to meet here. So how can we expand? Because I thought, and I still believe that what I taught has utility. I really, really want to say it. What I teach has value, but
do it. It's okay.
I pull back from. Well, the thing about that is that things have value, not according to me, but according to the consumer. Like that's the only person who has the, privilege of saying whether it has value or not.
Hey, if somebody's paying you to do something, it's got value. So
it has, but there's a difference between value and price.
Right. Cost versus worth. Yeah, always.
Right.
That's true.
And so, but I want to say it has utility. That's something I can say objectively. Right. So I wanted to do more. So that's why I've made over 150 different commercial DVDs and television programs, television episodes, more than any other individual, certainly in the world, but probably more than any other company in the world. So it's, I'm a professor for the great courses, and we've had the number one selling Tai Chi DVD on Amazon for the last 3 years in a row. Which, by the way, again, that is a record somebody needs to get out there and break. I don't think it's not right to sit at the top of the pile. It means that other people you could be stepping up more. Please, come on.
Maybe not to get in the weeds too much, but I will tell you, I built a WordPress site for an instructor that I know, and we have all of his videos going to an Amazon shared drive, and I had to do so many machinations to get this thing working. I am wondering what is your business model? I mean, when it was all VHS and DVDs, it was pretty easy, right? Give me $20, I'll give you a DVD, done. But now in kind of this new world, if you share a private YouTube link, then that person that you're giving to can just share it with anybody they want. right? It's sort of how to monetize in this new world. I have not found a really good way to do that. There's no white labeled put your dojo online site.
Got it. Right. So, well, there's a couple of things in there. Do you want me to talk a little bit about business model as far as
I
media
kind of
goes?
do. I think
Okay.
I think there are instructors out there that wouldn't mind some sort of path to go to say, look, I want to go down this route as well. And I think it would be beneficial to just maybe give them some guideposts to say, okay, this is probably not a good idea to do. This is
Yeah.
a great idea to do. That's kind of why I asked the question, is that if somebody else in our audience is looking at having a bigger online presence, what is the best way to go about doing that?
I'm happy to do that. So number one, the good news is that an online presence expands your marketplace infinitely. Like in the old days, when you had a brick and mortar studio, you were limited to the people who lived within a certain geographical radius, because that was the algorithm of who would come, how far people would drive and how much time they would spend in going, away from home and being at your studio. Now, however, those boundaries are completely thrown out the window. You have the entire world, all 7 billion people on the planet are your customers or your potential customers. And so you could fill up your dojo, if you do it properly, to the point where you're going to have all the business that you can handle and grow as much as you want to grow. So that's the good news. That's what an online presence gives you. In the terms of monetizing video content, like those days are over. There's no point in trying to monetize video content. Video content is a commodity now. There are so many people who have it for free, that trying to monetize it. So the video content and the video lessons are not what people.
Okay, so this whole paradigm of like a DVD where you say, here's my DVD, give me $20, that's just kind of gone at this point.
It's gone.
Okay.
Yeah. That to develop the distribution and hosting infrastructure will cost you more time and money than you'll get in as a return on that investment.
Yep.
Right. So see, that's my puddle.
It's okay.
The what people pay for, what is irreplaceable. So you have to think about what cannot be commoditized, and what cannot be commoditized is access. So they have access to you as an individual instructor. And my old man advice to younger instructors is don't follow the herd. If you see the whole industry or the whole style or the whole school going in one direction, try to do a 180 around that, or at least a 90, because be unique. You have a unique perspective. Even if you're young, you have a unique perspective. And the access to that unique perspective is what's worth paying for. And now, again, with the ability to reach 7 billion people, there's going to be plenty of folks interested in your particular perspective. When it was limited to the 400 people who lived in your town who might be interested in martial arts, then you wound up with 3 people who thought you were interesting. Now you can have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who think, oh, this dude, I like the way he thinks. I like the way that she teaches. I'm going to go to that school and that class. Right. So it's access that the business model is built around.
Very interesting.
And speaking of the access thing, is how everybody was on the internet. I mean, did in the last year interest in your YouTube, your Flow series, just blow up because you were already staged and ready to go? Right.
This is so funny because we were the first ones. Everybody's using Zoom these days. Like it's the thing. We were the very first company that did movement of any kind, fitness or yoga, Tai Chi or whatever. We were the very first company to use Zoom for that purpose. Before we came in like the first or second year that they were actually in business. And, we asked to meet other people who were also doing movement, and like, well, you're the only one. Everybody else is like, remote teams and, business meetings and stuff like that. And I used to tell people, you need to get yourself online. The day's going to come when this is the norm. And it was like, no, well, you have to have, face-to-face and contact, and you have like, okay. Because I would never in a million years say, oh, I'm glad for the pandemic. Like that's terrible. But it taught us a valuable lesson that you cannot be complacent in a world where things change so rapidly. If you want to have you can be complacent. The context is if you want to have a business.
Right. Yeah. It was I took it as a challenge. I knew a lot of people in our federation when pandemic hit. I mean, I used to be a videographer, and Dan used to be in video production and stuff too. So, it was for me, and I was living in Canada for a while, so I was doing I'd have them record the class, and then I'd do video critiques and yada yada. And so then when we got back, I was trying to stream the class. So it's like I've always, because I'm kind of geeky, I'm like, ooh, I want to try and get some sort of video component going on. And then when this hit, for the first, I don't know, month or so, I was just, recording off my laptop and whatever. But then once I realized that this was going to be here for a while, I started, 2 cameras and, bought a light, and, I got some mats, and I started embracing it. But I knew a whole lot of people that were just digging their feet in. They're like, nope, I'm either dropping my class, or, they would just barely, they weren't trying to do anything. And I was lucky enough to I had a lot of people from my federation come drop into my class, and me and a couple of the guys were talking about it, because I took it as a challenge of how can I be a better instructor? How can I get this material across? And even in the back of my head, I was still, because, David does it, and he's got a whole bunch of people doing it. And so, if that's, so again, you're still influencing my karate, decades later, is I was like, well, he does it, how can I, make this better? How can, what do I need to change? Or, how, what kind of tools do I need to implement? And it really, kind of kicked my creative juices going. And I told everybody that would listen, that were instructors, was like, you're missing the opportunity if you're not jumping into this. Not necessarily because, there's money to be made or blah, 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 blah. I said, but, you're still perpetuating, for me, you're still perpetuating your art. You're still,
Right. You think about it in that altruistic sense. It's like, okay, so I don't want to do it because, I'm greedy for money, and I don't want to just, give up my values as a teacher, whatever. Think about the students that have been looking for you for such a long time, don't live near you, don't have access to you as the way that some of your other students do, but is the person that you could change their life if only you could reach them. And that's the magic of what the internet gives us these days.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, of not saying, not really looking at it as, okay, there's a billion people and I want to at least get, X number, but more of the other way around, that these are the kind of people that I want and the kind of people whose life I think I can change.
Yes.
And look amongst, how many of those people are in a group of 7 billion. There's going to be a lot.
I did a workshop on this fairly recently about trying to make marketing seem simple. And the first thing is that you have to figure out who are the kind of people that you want to hang out with. So in the way that you're saying, Dan, who are the people that I'd like to have in my class, whose lives I can impact in a positive way? Who are those people? And so you had to get a sense of who they are. And then you go, okay, well, where do those guys all hang out? Where did, if I was going to go to a bar where only bikers hung out, I would go to the biker bar. I wouldn't go to the tea society. Right. And so then you go to where they're all hanging out, and then you do the Napoleon Dynamite dance.
Right. And see who gets up with you.
That's right. It's like because you have to capture their attention. So that's another utilization. Well, that's what you do with all that video content. The video
Right.
content
Is
is
attention.
you're spreading your Napoleon Dynamite dance out there so people can see you.
And that's what pulls them in.
That's right. Then you have a mutual kind of attraction. You go, oh, dude, I
You got
like
me.
the way he does that. And somebody else is there doing their dance. And you go,
Yeah.
that's not so much for me. I like
Well,
this.
Paul and I talk a lot about an honest approach to martial arts, and don't go into something selling it as something else because you need customers. Because because what'll happen is it's like lying on your resume. Is at some point you're going to get caught, and either you're not going to be able to do something that they want you to do, or they're not going to be happy. It's just like there's no need to go through that madness. Just say, this is what I think and how I feel, and this is the way my martial art works for me. And if that speaks to you, great. And if that doesn't, okay, that's totally cool. Like, we'll just go our
Absolutely.
separate ways. And I think that you're very, very right in that the marketing for what it's not used to be a much bigger factor because you just have a drastically reduced audience. But nowadays, again, you can speak to billions of people. So
Yeah, and you can.
I was going to say the bad news. So I gave all the good news about what the internet gives us. Here's bad news, good news, depending on what your perspective is. But the bad news is that on the internet now, if you're dishonest or inauthentic, you'll get found out much quicker than you used to be able to.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things that we've talked about many times. Is how the internet has changed martial arts in general, and that is one of the ways. People could, make up. The grandmaster in Go Run Hide. I trained in China for 49 years, and blah 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 blah. But now it's much easier for people to.
Just if you suck as an instructor.
Well, I mean, there's like I've been to when we travel, we travel quite a bit, and I go in these little towns and I'll see a school, and like sometimes I don't even have a website because they're the only school in town. But you go to the website and you read like the instructor bio, and just from the context of being a martial artist for as long as I've been, I can go like, that's crap.
Right.
Like they're using like weird terminology and like there's just no way. There's no way you could have done that, dude. Honestly, but no one knows. No one. At least, but back in the day, it was much easier to, obfuscate and hide and whatnot. But now it's so much easier to like Google somebody and go like, wait, he's 45. How could he have trained with like 16 different masters in China? And, da 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 da.
For a day each.
Yeah, and then as well as just, that's so I guess maybe that's kind of an interesting question for you on that is because you're such a strong presence online. I mean, have you gotten blowback on that from like, maybe in the Tai Chi community or just people in general? I mean, and how do you handle that?
I don't care.
Oh, there you go. Quick.
As my friend Les Brown says all the time, he says, someone else's opinion of you does not have to become your reality.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, it's it's very Tai Chi, right? It is where you realize that the force they're using against you doesn't exist in the first place, and it's you creating that, not them in any way. And there's nothing you need to do. I mean, all you need to do is say, I don't really care.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I guess, and we're coming out of the end of the pandemic. I mean, so are you seeing people, now pinging you and going like, hey, we want to be training in person, and do you see that shifting maybe from more or less online to more in person? I mean, so are you able to kind of keep the momentum?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, I'm not Nostradamus. I don't know the future. My sense of it, however, and this is consistent with the way I've always looked at it, is that now the use of technology and online teaching is here to stay. And it will probably be it will become the norm, with the in-person classes being the supplement. Right now, it's probably going to go back to, in-person classes will become, much more normalized, going back to, close to the way it used to be before the pandemic, with online classes being the complement. But I think that online classes are here to stay. And it is the business opportunity of the future, whereas in-person classes are the business opportunity of the past.
Right. Yeah, I'm so I already told all my guys I'm going to keep something going online just because, well, I found it as a great opportunity to people. We had guys from, some of our guys in Australia. We had, some of my friends in Canada, and they would come in and, they would teach and whatnot. And I'm like, why would you not do this opportunity to train with all these
Right.
different people that, like in my case, like I've heard, of our group in not in Argentina, well, in Argentina too, but in Australia. And, I've heard this guy's name kicked around, Gary Oliver, quite a bit. And then he popped in my class one day and fantastic and wonderful guy. And we trained. And so he kept coming back. And, I wouldn't have had that opportunity had it not been for the online training. So Dan's got to go here pretty soon. So we're going to try and wrap this up. Any thoughts for the future as far as martial training and how you see things going other than what we just said?
Well, my thought is, looking at for all the people think of me as being sort of, hippie granola and out there and, doing all this crazy online. And, I'm also quite traditional in a lot of ways. And I think about, we are so lucky to have the legacy of our various martial arts in our systems. And we are the treasure keepers, of that legacy. We're the current generation that needs to pass that along to the next generation, in a way that then it can keep on going. Like, how are we going to transmit the legacy that we received to the next generation so that they can pass it along and without losing too much? Yeah. And I think it goes back to the original intent of all martial arts, even the ones that are entirely combative. You look at Krav Maga. Krav Maga is a combative martial art, started in a time period where people were trying to survive against, Nazi aggression, and people who were beating up, innocent and helpless old women and children, right? And so, but the intention was to make a better world. Like, you don't start something to be, to protect yourself against aggressors for the purpose of turning the world into a combative zone.
Right.
Right. An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind, as Gandhi said, except for one guy who's got one eye. And then
one last guy.
2 men enter, 1 man leave.
And so, the intent was to leave the world a better place. And I think that is the future of the legacy of martial arts is we teach so that we leave a better world. And if you don't have that as part of your teaching, you will quickly become irrelevant. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to go out of business. You'll never have students. Of course you'll have students, but there'll be like a little pocket of people who want to do that one thing. And that's not passing on the legacy. The legacy gets passed on when we leave a better world than the one we found. And that's my strong, I don't know if you could tell, strong belief about what the future holds.
Oh, cool. All right. Wow. So here's the last 2 questions. And this is part of our new thing that now that we do the video thing, I may make this a separate thing to, like, it's 2 questions. And one is, where is the best place you've ever done martial arts?
The best place. Well, there's two answers I have. One is in China, because it is like in the source, in the soup. I'm swimming around. I soak up all the flavor. That was amazing. So that was great. And the other place is in Hawaii, man. Actually, there's 3 answers. So doing it in Hawaii was just so wonderful to live there and teach, like I get up every morning and go surfing, and then I go in the afternoon and go teach Tai Chi. Like, what could be a better life?
Yeah.
But the third answer, which is like everywhere I am, is the best place I've done Tai Chi.
That's a Tai Sabak. That's a body change, right? Okay. So here's question 2.
Okay.
Where's
the weirdest place you've ever done martial arts?
Weirdest place.
Everywhere is the weirdest place.
Everywhere is the weirdest. I don't know. There's so many little stories. I'll tell you one really quick little story. It was kind of weird for me. So when my youngest was in Montessori school, I went to pick her up one morning or one afternoon, and the teacher says, "Oh, by the way, thank you so much." And I'm like, "For what?" And she goes, "Well, Harper said that you're coming to school on Monday and teaching all the kids Tai Chi." I'm like, "Oh, really?"
Oh.
I heard that one. I'm like, "Okay." And so I came Monday, and then there's all these 6-year-olds out in
Oh,
front of me in
wow.
the schoolyard. And like, clearly the way that I teach Tai Chi is not going to fly with these 6-year-olds. So we just made up animals and just did all these
Oh, that's
funky
awesome.
movements and stuff. And that was our kind of my weirdest place.
Well, hey,
That-
as we wind down, I thought I heard you say you have a master class. Is that true?
We have a free class that we do almost every day of the week. I teach the class on Tuesday mornings.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's
I
it's
guess
live.
yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you? I wanted to give you the opportunity to shill your links essentially. So where
Okay.
can people
yeah,
find you?
yeah,
if
we're
they're
gonna have
interested?
all of them in the show notes. But yeah, absolutely. Go ahead and
Yeah.
share anything you need to get out there.
So we have a Zoom classroom that we invite people to, and you can go to our website, and I think I have this right there, taijifit.net.
Nice.
See, another
Um,
reason for the video show for people to watch.
Right.
Because
So
now
there you
you
go.
won't know what that is unless you watch.
That's right. So if you go to this our homepage and go scrolling all the way down to the bottom, blah, 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 at the very bottom where the menu is, you'll see the calendar. You can just click on one of those things and you're right in the class, free. No
Very cool.
passwords, no nothing. You just get right in. We also simultaneously stream to both Facebook and YouTube. So if you can't make it into the Zoom room, you can go to my YouTube channel or you can go to our Facebook page and
follow along.
join us there.
That's
The only
great.
thing that I say is, thou shalt not chi and drive. So if you're watching online, pull over.
And that would be the weirdest place someone did martial arts is like, I just pulled over and
That's right. On the
Oh,
side of
I've
the
done
road.
that a lot. Every road trip I take, I pull over and do Tai Chi on the side of the road.
Yeah.
oh yeah, you absolutely got to. Well, David-Dorian Ross, thank you for being on Karate Cafe. Dan and I got to get back into the work and stuff world. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your
Yeah.
instruction.
Thank you very, very much.
For me and your words of wisdom to all of our listeners out there.
Super
I
fun
really
interview.
appreciate the opportunity to share. I really appreciate you.
Thank you very much.